Welcome, everybody, to the TechWise Financial podcast here today. As you know, my name is Evan Frazier. Very excited about the discussion we're going to have today. With me today, we have Zac Tornquist from Inspire. And a lot of the clients out there are going to recognize that as we do use quite a bit of their products here at TechWise. That being said, that we always have to give that disclaimer. Investment services, they're not bank deposits. They're not insured by FDIC or any other entities and are subject to investment risks, including possible loss of principal amount invested. Now that we've got that out of the way, Zac, excited to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I'd love to, Evan. And thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I appreciate not only your business, but what you're doing. And I am very familiar with those disclaimers and have a good time saying them as well. Well, yeah, a touch of my background. So I work for Inspire Investing. I mostly work with advisors now and help them to understand what is faith-based investing or biblically responsible investing. I got started back in 2015 in the industry as a banker with JP Morgan Chase. Saw a lot of success, but it was mostly in selling credit cards, selling loans, and realized fairly quickly I don't want to get everyone into debt. That's got my parents into a little bit of trouble, and that's really not what I saw my career going into. But I also saw that there was a guy who showed up once a month at our branch driving a fancy car and a nice suit, and he was doing investments. I thought, okay, that's the life for me. So I got into investing, wanted to help people grow their assets, and it wasn't until I'd been doing that for a few years that I discovered faith-based investing. And at that time, it was actually with Inspire as well as some other companies, kind of helped me to realize that although I'm buying stocks and buying bonds with companies, I'd never put any thought into the moral side of it. What are these companies doing to actually make money and turn a profit? And so that was just a huge eye-opening experience for me, and kind of made some changes and have never looked back since.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you on this side of the table with that. So tell me, I guess, a little bit in your own words, how would you describe, faith-based investing or biblically responsible investing?
Yeah, great question. I would describe it as for faith-based investors, when we're in the market, we want to own companies that are aligned with our values, or at the very least, maybe don't spit directly in the face of Christian values. Hope that's okay to say on here.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned, most investors have no idea that they are profiting from activities that are directly opposed to biblical values. Things like abortion, abortifacient, drug sales, pornography, human rights violations. I mean, the list goes on. And most people, like I said, just have no idea.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you had shared with me recently that I found kind of shocking was that, for a lot of these, if you like the Vanguard index style funds and you're doing kind of that total stock market side, is that all of a sudden now, hey, I'm earning money and profiting from strip clubs, right? Never in my wildest dreams
Mm,
did I ever think, oh, I'd be a part owner in a strip club.
yeah, I get that reaction a lot. I've talked to advisors more and more, and I always ask them, are you familiar with the ticker, right? The stock market ticker, RICK, Rick. Now, usually they say no, and they say, well, they look it up. They say that's RCI Hospitality. I said, well, that's a cute name, but they're Rick because it's Rick's Cabaret, publicly traded strip club. And just like you said, that's very rarely on anybody's ambition list when they're getting into the industry. And any investor, right? They most of the time have no idea that they own it, but we all know what drives the profits of a strip club like that. And I think most of us would rather just avoid that. If we could avoid that in our portfolio and do, about the same, if not better with returns, why even entertain that?
Right. Absolutely. Well, and not only that, Zach, as we talk with the biblically responsible side, is that a lot of these companies not only are profiting from these things, but they're making important changes to our society because of that, right? That they're pushing values that we don't agree with. So, I guess, how does biblically responsible and inspire? How do they fight back about that change in American values?
Such a good question, Evan. And I think, you know, just real quick to preface that, I think when most people talk about faith-based investing, faith-based in the market, it always stops at the screening out of negative companies. So we're gonna not profit from, like we mentioned, abortive fashion, drug sales, pornography, and XYZ. And most of the time, the conversation stops there. But even better, right? If we can filter all that stuff out, great. But the next layer is we want to, one, find the most impactful companies, the companies that are doing the most good in the stock market. We think that that is just a good long-term investment strategy for companies kind of keeping their nose out of politically divisive issues, just being a great business, being voted best in class in a variety of categories. That's just a good business model. And then that final leg, like you were alluding to, is what we call shareholder engagement. So just as an example, Inspire, right? We're an asset management firm. We have, billions of dollars that people have trusted us with. And because we own shares in companies, we get to vote. They're the proxy shares. When a company comes up and says, hey, we need to make a decision, is it going to be A or is it going to be B? We get to vote the shares that we own. And so does BlackRock and Vanguard and all the other big names. But they're not doing that with a biblical lens. They're not saying we would rather see profits go back into the company and grow for our shareholders. A lot of times there's a, dare I say, I don't know, am I allowed to say woke?
Yes.
Dare
We
I
talk
say,
woke here a lot.
okay, well, that leftist, that woke leaning, right? Who's pushing that? Well, the asset managers, the companies that control the lion's share of stock in the market, they're the ones who are kind of pushing that ball further down the field. And then there's places like Inspire who would say, hey, we're not activists. We don't say you have to or should even donate just to Christian ministries. I would say just focus on your business. Just be a good company and stay out of the politically divisive issues.
Absolutely. I think this thing is, I think we've lost track of the real option here is not to try and manipulate the public, but it should be the money should be used to make returns for the shareholders. So, can you tell me maybe a time where Inspire's been successful about that shareholder engagement to really push back on that woke side of the world that we're seeing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the just amazing win stories from even a smaller firm like Inspire compared to the massive Goliaths in the room. Um, Costco doesn't sponsor gay pride events. Exxon doesn't donate to Planned Parenthood. Chevron doesn't send abortion kits to Africa. You know, big name companies that most of which don't want to, they aren't activists. They just get so much pressure from the other side and they hear such little from our side saying, hey, we don't want you to do these things. So those are some amazing win stories. And most recently, over the last, uh, boy, I mean, just going on all the time, would be the issue of debanking. So Christian bank accounts getting closed at some of the largest financial institutions in the world. And it's basically cloaked under these vague terms of, risk and, different issues that the banks say, well, we just don't want to do business with you anymore. And, their only crime is essentially being a Christian.
Gotcha. And you guys were able to push back against that and get them to stop with that?
Yeah, yeah, there's been many resolutions filed at some of the largest financial institutions. There's been entire companies that have revamped their policy to basically ensure religious liberty, right? Because everyone wants to talk about the freedom to express yourself, and we would say every employee should be treated fairly, whether you're an employee or a client. You should the company should treat you fairly, but it's not fair to elevate one demographic of people over another. And we would say treat all of your customers and clients fairly. And specifically with that debanking issue, just being able to push back and say, hey, this isn't right. Closing accounts based off of religious affiliation, no matter what religion, is wrong.
Hmm. Right. Now, you kind of hinted at this a couple times, in that the focus should not be on social engineering, but on just kind of being the best at your business that you can be. I mean, we can think about times where that's really blown up in a company's face, Bud Light, Target. Um, it seems like you've had some success with the fighting against the banking and really with the shareholder engagement, some success there. So I guess tell me, really, is there anyone left for you guys to invest in? Like, what does that leave you for the market?
Oh, I see. Because with the thought of everybody must be doing this, right? Everybody's an activist and doing something to get them kicked out of a biblically responsible portfolio. That is a great question. And our screening software is our methodology and our screening is considered the most rigorous, among the most rigorous, at the very least, in the industry. And roughly 85% of the Russell 3000 passes our screening, meaning they're not doing anything to get them kicked out of our portfolios and are considered investable. And I think that leads to the next objection, if you don't mind, Evan, would be, well, what about returns? Right? If you're filtering out the companies that are, pushing this agenda, we could probably name, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, right? Those are in everybody's portfolio, and yet they're the ones that are actively pushing this, really with both hands. If you don't invest in those companies, what will your returns look like? Well, I have to work for another 10 years before I can retire because I didn't keep up with the market. And that's a great question. The way that I like to do it is we just take a look at the actual funds and compare them to the benchmark. So ISMD is our small and mid cap ETF, and that benchmarks against the S&P small cap 600. Our fund is rigorously screened for Christian values, and yet it has beaten its benchmark 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and going all the way back to inception. So we would make the case that great performing funds that are well executed are not mutually exclusive from rigorously screened Christian values.
And I think that's an important distinction to make, because I do get that question a lot, where people say, well, this ESG or these, morally responsible funds, they tend to underperform. And that might have been true 20 years ago when there wasn't the ability to do a lot of research and things like that. But I think, as you guys have shown at Inspire, the ability to really dig in there and look at those things on the screens, you are able to build portfolios that don't have those concerns anymore. On the flip side of that's great for portfolios that you guys have already built, but what do we look at for clients that have their own existing portfolios? How can they tell, how bad is it? How bad is my portfolio really?
Hmm. Boy, that's a great question. And I mentioned our screening software. What I would want to encourage every faith-based investor to do is to work with an advisor like you, Evan, who has access to our screening software, where we can take and that would be you, right? You would be able to take their existing portfolio as it is and run that through Christian screening profile to be able to say, do you have exposure to exploitation, pornography, tobacco, alcohol, gambling, right? The list goes on. What a simple way to just meet with an advisor, say, hey, I want to know, do I have exposure to this, right? It's all about just discovering. I'm sure, Evan, that you've got wonderful portfolios that include us and not just us that are going to be able to achieve those long-term goals without sacrificing the morals right now.
Yeah, and I really do. I love your Resonate tool. I think it's a fantastic tool. Because I've had a few skeptics. I've had people come and they say, "Well, it can't really be that bad." But yeah, you walk them through it, you have it run, and as we talked about the strip clubs earlier, they're always shocked. They're like, what do you mean I'm profiting off of abortion drugs? What do you mean I'm making money off of pornography, right? Again, it's the education side of it, and just being able to show people that this stuff really is happening and bringing it into the light is, I think, helps to, you know, start to shut these things down within that. So I
Oh,
guess tell me a little bit about how Inspire got started. What was the inspiration for Inspire?
see what we did there. Well, I'll give you the short version. Our CEO and founder, Robert Netzley, he was a Wells Fargo private client advisor. He was in California, had an office overlooking the beach with $1 million account minimums for all his clients. But he was also the pro-life pregnancy center president. So in their local town, he's the president of the pro-life pregnancy center. And as he's preparing to give a talk at church, does a little digging on Google, and for the first time realizes that he personally owns 3 or 4 stocks in companies that actively manufacture abortion drugs. So you can you can probably imagine that as he's an advisor and he's telling his clients what to buy, he's managing his own account, and yet he knows every time a young lady has an abortion at the Planned Parenthood across the street, he's literally profiting from that. That is, and just a real quick, I've been told that since Roe v. Wade was overturned, the amount of abortions in this country have actually went up because people have
Yep.
moved into the just mail order abortion drugs. That really is the battle for life right now is, do we want to own the companies that produce this and then sell it? And that's what drives their bottom line and therefore creates more demand for the stock, right?
I was at a conference earlier this year, and they were talking about that. There's about 1 million abortions done a year. Half of those now come from the pill
Mm,
on that side, and it's just, I don't think people are aware of the scale of that, right? Uh,
wow.
on that, that is half like that.
We that's fascinating and terrifying all at the same time. Thanks for sharing that. We have a marketing piece that we share that pictures the Smiths, kind of this typical client. It says the Smiths, they volunteer at a pro-life pregnancy center. And right under that, it says, yet they own Johnson and Johnson in their retirement account. Below that, it says Johnson and Johnson actively manufactures abortion drugs.
Yeah,
I just wonder how many of your listeners are in that exact same boat. I hope that you can hear that this is not a shame message. Like I've said, most people have no idea what they're profiting from. And it's there's a bit of a curtain in between us and our investments. But now with the screening software and funds that are low cost, well performing, right, you really just don't have to do that anymore.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the important thing is, again, evil flourishes in the dark. And I think the more that we can bring these things to light and educate people and show them that, hey, this is happening and your money without your knowledge is being used to do this. And not just to tell people that so that they're depressed and, oh no, what can I do? But we have a solution. We can really align our faith and our finances at the same time and still accomplish all of our goals. I think that's what the good news of faith-based investing would really be. And as I hear a lot from Robert and I in our discussions for you and I, it's all about being a good steward of that money as well, right?
Mm.
That we've been given this gift. We've used our time and our talents to earn this money. Um, why stop short of the finish line and not look at how we're growing that money as well? On that note of being a steward, I know that Inspire does quite a bit in the, I don't want to call it fundraising, but more of the gifting, working. I think you guys have like a clean water program overseas and things like that, more the charitable aspects of that. So I guess tell me a little bit more, the profit that you guys are making, how are we returning that, or how are we being good stewards with that?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And that is called the Give 50 campaign. And from the very beginning, when Inspire started, we committed to giving 50% of our net profits to vetted Christian charities. And so what that has most recently looked like was based on those same fees that, all the asset managers charge, we take that to fund our business. And then what's left over, those profits, right? 50% goes to vetted Christian charities. The last, we were able to transform a village in Guatemala through building a church. That was the first project. We wanted all the blessing to flow through that church and not, just from some people in America far away, but no, boots on the ground church. And then it was, a water well and remodeling a school, medical supplies, right? All of this just made possible by already low cost expense ratios within these funds. So we I couldn't be more proud of that particular element. So thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely. I think it's a great thing within there. I think what I really like about you guys is being a newer company, and being a lot more flexible, I think, than some of these, kind of old sticks in the ground like a Vanguard or a BlackRock and things like that, is you are able to respond better to the market, I think, quicker. We're getting ready to have Brian Enriquez on, from Barnabas, and he's been partnering with you guys on the biblically responsible, uh, structured notes
Yeah.
within there. So excited to have him on coming up soon. But I'm curious. Besides the Give 50 and some of those things, is there anything else that you guys feel like you're able to be nimbler, uh, more innovative, that you might have coming out?
Well, I think in the world of faith-based investing, we're definitely not the oldest player in the group, right? It's been around for going on 25 years now. The biggest barrier though has been cost. So for most mutual funds that are faith-based historically, you were looking at roughly 10 times more expensive to use those than just to go with your secular traditional option, your BlackRock, your Vanguard. But our new index fund, PTL, praise the Lord, went live 2 months ago, raised over $100 million in 10 days because it's the first faith-based ETF, and it's at 9 basis points expense ratio. So literally a half a basis point cheaper than just buying SPY, the world's largest ETF.
Praise the Lord, indeed. It's pretty amazing that you guys were able to have it grow that quickly, just 2 months in, and compete with, yeah, the largest ETF out there on that. Well, wonderful. Well, Zach, I really appreciate you coming by and spending some time to talk to us a little bit about the faith-based investing. Anything else we should know about?
No, I just appreciate you having me on the show, Evan. And if there's anything that these clients need, I'm sure that you'll be able to take care of them and show them a solid alternative to investing in ways that are just so contrary to their values. So thanks for everything you're doing.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you guys on. Again, my name's Evan Frazier with the TechWise Financial Planning Podcast. So, if you are interested in talking more about anything we've discussed today, whether it's biblically responsible investing, the Resonate tool to screen your own investments, things like that, feel free to give me a call at 719-413-5614. You can always email me too at evan@techwisefinancial.com.